Just thought I'd share with you what I'm using for 2017 at weddings. We're going to a wedding, well I'm going to a wedding in about 2 hours time, and it's a wedding in a hotel. It's quite sunny today, so I should think they'll go out for an hour and a half. But I'm setting up as though I'm going to the darkest hotel in the country. I'm not using prime lenses, but I just thought I'd show you what I've been using for the past 12 years. Pretty much the same as I'm going to use this year and hopefully next year. So let's have a look. So I managed to pick up a 24-105, always use 24-105s, and then sold mine last year because I was looking forward to having the Mark II. Because I buy new equipment at the start of the year and sell it at the end of the year generally. Managed to find a brand new one. So the 24-105 f4 IS lens is the one I've been using. This one's pretty smooth. One thing to look out for if you're going to buy a 24-105 is the zoom action, because they can get very stiff. Mine ended up getting very stiff. So when you go to buy one, just check out that. The other thing that goes is that the red ring splits and comes off. Mine did, but I glued it back on. This is after a lot of use and a lot of banging around. So they're amazing lenses. Most wedding photographers, I would say, use the 2.8 lens. If they had the 2.8 lens 24-70 and it was image stabilized and it had the stabilization in the lens, I would probably go for that one, even if it cost £2,000. So Canon, just copy Nikon. They've got the image stabilization in the lens and it's a 2.8 lens. So yeah, but for now this is what we've got. We've got the 24-105. The Mark II has been announced. Looked at a lot of reviews and there's not much difference except for the fact they've increase the weight of the lens. I haven't used it, so I can't comment on that lens. But the 24-105 Mark I, the original lens, is well worth getting. Try not to buy a worn out second-hand one. If you can still buy a brand new one, I actually know where there's about 6 if you phone me pretty quickly. But anyway, the 5D Mark I body. You can look at a lot of reviews about the body. I've used the Mark II, Mark III and the Mark IV I haven't yet used, but the Mark I body is a unique camera. I've got another video about that, just about the 5D Mark I, but it's a classic body. Just a note on the side door, you've obviously got your compact flash card. So what I've done is I've adapted it to use iFi cards from Amazon. You can buy an SD to compact flash. This particular one was recommended. Let's see how close I can get. Oh, the video is working well, that's always good. So if you look out for that, I can't really remember, it was on Amazon. This is a 4th generation. I've looked recently and they've got a 3rd generation. But this one works well. The only way you're going to find out if they work is by trying them, unfortunately. I think iFi have brought out a similar sort of thing with compact flash. I don't know, but I use the iFi Pro, 32 gig. Not perfect. Nothing's perfect in photography, unfortunately, but it's the best I've got at the moment. Still very good. It's worked well. So another thing to look out on the iFi website is look out for compatibility with cameras and battery life. I use this with the XT1, the iFi card, and it just murdered the battery. So I tried out the Fuji stuff last year. It's very good, but I'll probably do a separate video comparing all the different cameras for weddings. So I've come back to the 5D Mark I, 24-105, and it's not just a safety, it's literally one of the best combinations I've found for weddings. People keep on asking me about the strap on the and emailing me. That was literally an eBay and it came with a case, so I don't know where you can get that, but yeah, it's a very nice little strap actually. But I didn't use straps at all up until last year. I just used a bag and cameras, but I've started using straps again, so we'll see how it goes this year. I try to have the camera as clean as I can, as in nothing in the way when you're trying to use it. This strap does okay, but obviously, yeah, straps can be a pain. There's lots of different ones out there, so keep trying them. Obviously I just set up with 2 batteries. That can last me a wedding. So standard batteries, but I just use 2 of them. I have 2 backups in the bag. Keep that in shot so you can see it. And I just keep a couple more just in case. I also use a flash meter. This is an incident light meter, Seconic. See if I can get you to look at that one. So you can pick these up. This is the 30B. This is very old. On eBay you can pick these up. Good for doing all your flash work. It does your ambient light. A lot of people will be wondering why I use that. I'm not saying I use it all the time, but at weddings, sometimes you just cannot think. You're trying to organise groups, you're trying to do things. If you've got this around your neck and taking an ambient reading takes you a few seconds and you work manually, you'll find that it's quicker than getting it wrong in AV mode and then trying to put it right in between shots. So yeah, not saying I use it all the time, but it's a very useful little thing to have. It's very lightweight. And you know, you don't even know it's there in the bag, but when you need it, when you can't think, it's very useful. I've always used the 50mm as a backup lens, so I've always had a 50mm 1.8 Mark II. This year they've brought out the STM lens, which is a better focusing system, so I use that. But also use an extension tube. I think this one's Kenko rings a bell. So that's the 12mm one. So I keep that in the bag and they go together if you line them up right. So I use the 50mm 1.8 as a backup lens. Literally, if all else failed and the 24-105 and the 70-200 went down and all of the equipment went down, obviously batteries, I know I can complete a wedding with a 50mm 1.8, start to finish, with a variety of shots. People ask, well, you should have a separate wide angle. I have actually got a backup for that in the camera I'm videoing with, so there is a wide angle option, but you can stitch images together. You know, the 50mm 1.8 is literally there as a brand new lens. Very rarely gets used as a lens on its own, because the 24-105 at 50mm at f4 image stabilized is pretty hard to beat, to be honest with you. So, but that's the backup lens. If you looked at one lens that really, you can go to my website, richardbarley.co.uk, all one word, so it's richardbarley.co.uk. You start to see how I use the 24 all the way through to 200mm, and the crossover is obviously, I've got a 24-105, so I've got all these portrait lenses in each lens. This is one of the reasons I do the crossover lenses. A lot of people will go 24-70 in one lens. I actually like the fact from 70mm to 105, I've got all my portrait lenses in there. And between 70 and obviously 105 in this lens, I've got portrait lenses. So either lens I can get away with using if I haven't swapped. So if something happens and I've got this lens on, I can do all the groups at 70mm and stand back unless I'm in a tight spot. So that's the crossover between the lenses is quite important for me. I've only realised that through using other equipment. Last year I was using an XT1 with an 18-135. That went very well because you've got a 3.5 at the wide angle lens, so you can use that through the ceremony with an electronic shutter, and you can go all the way to 135, which is the equivalent of a 200mm lens on this. Worked well. There's lots of different reasons I switched from Fuji. If you're in Fuji at the moment, I wouldn't suggest coming out because they are getting better, but Canon to me are just in a different league at the moment. They were there a long time ago, and there's lots of little reasons I use this equipment. But today I'm just showing you what I've got in the bag. Hopefully I can do a few videos and show you all the elements that make up the reason I use it. But the 70-200 f4 image stabilized lens, there you go, is relatively lightweight, lighter than the 2.8, and is a brilliant lens. So what have we got now? Then flash, I've always used Canon 580 flash guns, used them for years, absolutely fine. But then I thought, what happens if I've got a small camera setup with wireless? And I started doing this last year, and I just want to optically slave the flashes. So when my main little flash goes off, I can make them go off without any technology at all. The only thing I need from a flash is for it to go off and to be able to manually set it an 1/8 power or a 1/4 power. Weddings with the 580s or a guide number of 58 means you're at 1/4 power, 1/8 power a lot of the time. So I looked at these Sunpack, and also Kenko are doing the same flash. But the main thing for me, I'm not going to go into flashes today, but the main thing is that you can set 1/8 power on this flash. You've got a backup flash. Again, set at 1/8 power. The only difference between the two is I put a band on the one so I know it's my main flash, so I can keep track of it. This is the equivalent of the 580s. Obviously you're saving some money. Go and have a look. You might be able to get one of these for about 80 quid each. It's not just about saving money, it's a fact on these compared to the 580s. You've got this S1 mode. Now the S1 allows you to use any flash gun off any camera to trigger these flashes optically, and that's a manual setup, that's not ETTL or TTL. This also will work on a Nikon or a Canon, you know, if you mix your equipment, which I doubt anybody does, but I think the odd person does. But anyway, so the fact I can set 1/8 power on that and just use that manually anywhere I like, and I can trigger it with that one, or I can use a tiny little flash on the top of the 5D or any camera, use the G10 or any camera and just flash and make them go off is all I need. I don't get involved in any technology for the sake of it. The technology should be there just to make your life easier, and I find with a lot of the technology on these cameras it's actually there and it makes your life harder. So I work purely manually on the main camera. An outside exposure might be 200th of a second, 5.6 at 200 ISO, and I work around that. And then inside I work around at a 60th of a second at f4, because they're both f4 lenses inside, give me an extra stop. So I work at a 60th of a second at f4, and if I have no flash I'm generally at 3200 ISO or at 1600 ISO. And if I'm using this technique with flashes, then I'm working an 1/8 power on the flashes. I'm working at 800 ISO, and that gives me an aperture of f4. So this system allows me to work at f4 inside and 5.6 outside. You can buy the 2.8 lenses, All the numbers change, obviously. You can work at 2.8, but then you've limited your depth of field. And one thing that I can tell you is there's a general push towards using lenses wide open, and from running workshops and teaching people a bit about wedding photography, what I've learnt is that everybody's going towards 2.8, then they're pushing on towards f2, and what they're actually doing is limiting their chances of actually coming back with a wedding. Something I teach people is you'll find 10 to 50 years ago, look at wedding photographers, talk to the older wedding photographers, you'll find some retired ones, well, quite a few now, and you'll find they're working at this f4 or 5.6, and a good reason for working at 5.6 outside is because you're stopping the lens down by one stop, making it sharper, creating more depth of field. So I'm not actually creating less depth of field for blurry backgrounds, I'm actually creating more depth of field. Controversial, because everyone seems to be going the other way, but you've got to come back with the wedding. People are more interested in the images being sharp and actually the content being there. That's the most important thing. So if you're pushing down towards 2.8 and f2 and the trend is to go 1.8, there's 1.4 lenses, just bear in mind that when you're actually physically there and people are moving and you're moving and you're trying to come back with these weddings, it can be tricky. Not saying don't do it, I'm just giving you some advice. If I really want to push towards f2 in the evening, then I will use the 50mm f2 lens. Sorry, 1.8 lens, going around in circles. Right? But that's the standard kit. There isn't much else in this bag. The only thing I do is I have a booking form, which might have a groups list on there. Let me show you that because that's got people's details on. And that's the wedding I'm going to today. So I've got the booking form, 24105 f4 IS, 5D Mark 1, 2 flash guns, which guide number 58, always work on that. If you go down to the 43 guide number, which tends to be the Canons, the smaller Canons, just remember everything I'm saying about numbers just changes. It's sticking to the same things, that's the key, sticking to the same numbers, going to the wedding with the same kit, and then adding certain lenses to make it more creative. So this is my basic kit. I hope that helps. I won't make the video too much longer. Hopefully do a bit about flash at some stage, but I've got to get ready for this wedding anyway. So hope that helps. If you've got any questions, just have a look below and you can ask some questions. I'll try and reply to them as soon as I can. Be controversial. You know, if you disagree with what I'm saying, if you think, you know, we should all be using auto mode at weddings, let me know. But one thing I will say is weddings are a lot easier if you use manual everything. Okay, hope that helps.